Hey everyone, this is Prince from Desi Programmer. I will come back to another exciting video in the Node JS MongoDB Express series. And although the series is all about MongoDB, but in this video we're actually going to talk about SQL, that's basically MySQL. The reason is very simple. First of all, I just want to completely get out of this myth that you have to use Node JS in MongoDB only. Although once you are a little better with development, you will basically know that you can just add any database with any technology as long as there is a driver supporting that. But there are one more reason is that nowadays cPanel is also configuring Node.js by default. So basically you can create a Node.js application and then deploy it on any shared hosting. And since shared hosting give MySQL option by default, you can actually use Node.js to create a project and then put it out on cPanel using SQL. As MongoDB is not available there, so you might have to again buy another different service for hosting your MongoDB database, or you may have to rely on the free service provided by cloud.mongodb.com or maybe AWS GCP, wherever you go. Anyway, skipping that, let's first see what we're going to do in this video. So obviously in this video we're going to see how we can use Node.js and then how we can connect to a MySQL database, and then just to clear the concepts of data insertion and retrieval, we are going to create this simple registration form. So basically here you can enter your data. Let's say I can enter Prince. Let me enter my email as prince@gmail.com, although this is not my email. Then you can enter your high school. So it's basically your education. I'll just put as graduate, and then country I'll put as India. Let's click on register and this will register you. And once you have done that, you can basically click on the search. Then in the search you can enter the same email ID which you have entered, and then when you click on the search, this will retrieve your data and this will show you here. And if you enter an email which is not yet registered, obviously when you click on search you will get this, hey, no data found. I know this ain't a very pretty amazing application and so, but this will basically clear out the concepts of using SQL and Node.js. Also, before I move forward, this video is in no way about SQL, so you should know about SQL queries and all. If you know, that's pretty good. If you don't know, that's okay. You may obviously work with MongoDB itself. Now, before we move forward, we may have to do a little setup quickly. So if you want to use SQL and phpMyAdmin, you should basically just install XAMPP control panel. This will give you a quick access to both of them. And then here I will simply set up my application as soon as possible. Then we will start writing some code. So I'll first create a directory. I will name it as node_SQL_register. Then I'll switch to that directory. Now here I need to install a couple of stuff. You already know that we have to install EJS, we have to install Express, but this time we don't have to install Mongoose. We have to install MySQL. Then we will quickly install NodeMon as a dev dependency. And I will do the simple setup and then we will start writing some code. So as you can see, I have my very basic setup up and running. There's nothing very interesting. As you can see that I just have a good UI. I won't even say good, it just looks pretty decent. All that I've done is that in my views, I have created a layouts folder which has a navbar and everything is from Bootstrap. Then we have an index and a search. I have already added the form. I have given the styling and all, but all the code that's necessary for interacting with our backend will be added later. I've added a font from Google Fonts and everything else is pretty same. In the index.js, again, I have nothing much. All that you can see is that I have an Express app setup. I have added the EJS engine. I set the URL encoded, that's for parsing the body. And then I have set the static folder to public, where I have a single file that's style.css with a little bit of styling to make sure that everything looks a little bit bold and large. Then here that's what we get. As you can see, we have the home and then we have the search, which so I had to add a get search, but that I will do very soon. Now let's first go to our phpMyAdmin, and here in my phpMyAdmin I have to actually create a table. I have a database named APIs, so I will create a table right here itself, and then we will connect to this particular database using Node.js. So we'll simply create a table named register. Here we have an ID, which is simply for storing ID. Then we have name, email, education and country. So I'll just go back to the original format. I'll click on go and this will create a table for me. Okay. Sorry, this should be primary key. Alright. So I've added that as primary key, and now we are good to go. If you see the structure, we have ID, name, email, education and country. Alright, now we have to go back to our Node.js, register yourself. We don't have anything to do right here, but we have to actually connect to our database. And for that, as I have already mentioned, we have installed the SQL package that will do that for us. So first of all, we simply need the package. So we have to say const MySQL is equal to require. Now that we have MySQL, we have to connect to MySQL. So for that, I will simply create a variable. We'll name that as connection, and this connection is equal to MySQL dot create connection. Now here in the create connection, we pass a certain data. So just as we do with PHP, we need a host, then we need a user, then we need the password, and the last thing that we need is a database. So the host is simply our local host. So I will say local host. The user in this case is obviously root. There's no new user. I'll simply leave the password as empty because I haven't set any password. And the database name, just as I said, will be APIs. And this is what we have for our create connection. Everything looks pretty good as of now. Then we have to actually connect to this. So this var connection has this data, and then we have to connect to it, right? Now sometimes you will see that you will connect to MySQL right here, then you will do your job, and then you will end the connection. But I'm simply creating a single global connection. So for that, all that I have to say is connection dot and then connect. When I say connection dot connect, I get a callback, which is a function, and this function takes a parameter which is error. So if there is any error, I'm just saying console dot log, although you can put an console dot error, but I'm saying console dot log, and then we have an error connecting. Okay, nothing much. I just have this simple thing, and then else if there is no error, that means we have a connection. So I can simply say console dot log and connected. After this, always make sure that your MySQL is already up and running. Basically, XAMPP is already up and running, because this is the single error I always get. I always try to start this, but then my SQL is not running, so I can't be connected. But if your SQL is running, and you will basically see this one particular prompt, which means that now your Node.js is connected to your SQL, which is pretty good. Let me just create another simple get route here that will call /search, and here we will render the search view. So now if you go back to my browser, if we refresh, if you go back to search, we have search your registration. If you go back to home, we have register yourself. Now let's go to our index.ejs, and here let's add a couple of stuff. So for our form, I'm simply going to add the method, and the method is going to be post, remember, and then we have an action, and the action is going to be at, let's say, /register. You can use this their form and all to register people and then to show their data if you want. You can do login too, but sometimes while registration you don't actually do login, you just enter the data and then you use a couple of filtrations to show them their data. So we have method and we have action. Next thing is that you can see we have name, that is name as an email. We have this form group, we have this select option where the name is education, and then here we have a name of country. I think this should be email, not text. Alright, and then in the submit we just have a value that says register. So that's pretty much it from our side right now. If you want, you can put required to true and all, everything for front-end validation. Right now I won't do any kind of back-end validation when it comes to registration. I will simply just get the data from the front end, I'll put it in the back-end. We'll actually talk about back-end validation, which ain't even much, but we will talk about that in our authentication videos. So now we have this stuff. So let's go here, let's create a route. I will say app dot post. This is a post route, and this route goes to /register. But normal we have request, we have response, and this response and request will do stuff for us. So first of all, I have to grab the data from the front end, which will be, we have name, email, and education and country from our request.body. And always remember, you should have added a parser there, basically body parser, or else you won't get this data. Having done that, all that you have to do is to create a query. Now that's the interesting part. All that you have to do is that you have to say connection dot query, and here you can enter your SQL query. Now this can be a plain SQL query, like let's say select all from tasks, which means select all from task, and then you can the next thing that you see here is a callback function, just as always. So you can say function, and the callback function will have parameters like error and then results. You may even have here an option to field for fields, but we will just leave that. So we have error and results. Now in this function of error and results, if there is some error, we can throw the error. So if there is error, I'm saying throw error. But if there is no error, that basically means we have some data. So result will be an array of rows. So you can basically iterate in that array and get your data. Right now we don't have to worry about that at all. All that I have to do here is to insert data. Now what if we have to use placed value? So as we all know, if you have to insert data, our query will be something like insert into register, and then in the register we have values like name, we have email, we have education, and we have country, and here we again have values. So our values will be 4 question mark, because basically we don't have any value now, we will add them later. Now here, although I have read sometimes suggesting that create a string and then run it as a query, and then some people were like, hey, what if these people use this as an SQL injection? Well, most of the time you can see when you read a blog, or basically if you read the documentation of this library itself, they say that they have already taken care of that thing, like escaping the values. If you want, you can use that too. If you don't want, you can simply put your values and then that will be inserted. So here, since I have to put 4 values, we have to put an array of values. So I will simply say name, email, then we have education, and then we have country. Now remember, this name, email, education, and country are these 4 values which we are getting from our front end, that is from our form. Then we are inserting them into this table at these particular places. Once you do that, assuming that data has been inserted, we will simply say rest dot redirect to our home page. So this means our data has been inserted. So let's go back to our console, and we have everything which looks pretty good. Let's go back here, let's refresh. Then I'll simply enter some data. Now when you click on register, I come back to our home page, and obviously we're not seeing any kind of our alerts here, but let's keep that aside because that is a different topic. And here if you go to browse, you can see that you have one data. So we have ID of 1, name, email, education, and country. That's good. Let's enter some more data. And as you can see, we have now 2 rows. So in simple terms, our data insertion is working pretty good. Right, the next thing that we have to do is again pretty simple. All that we have to do is to go to our search route. Now in our search route too, if you go back to our code, if you go to our search.egs, everything looks pretty good. We have to go to our from. Now method, again I want the method to be post. Let's work with post data only, and our action, I want that to be /search. So we have to create this route. Again in input we have a type of email, we have the name of email, so that's everything which we want, the name, which is obviously here. So let's go to our index.js, and here I can simply say app.post and app.post/search. Again we will have request, we will have response, and that's here. So see, now in this query we were not dealing with the result. That's why I have created this particular query where we can deal with the results, and rest stuff like deletion, updation is again same. If you know SQL, you won't face any problems, or not many problems. You may face a couple of them, but then everything will be good to go. If you don't know SQL, then that's a different issue. So if you're basically starting out and you want to go with MongoDB, that too is okay. But right here in our app.post/search, we have to write our query. So first of all, I have to get the data. So const email will come from request dot body dot email, and then there here we have to again start a query. So we have our connection dot query, and this query will be we have to actually select some data. So we have to say select all, basically star from register where, and here I want the email to be question mark because I have to put that value. Just as usual, I'll put here email, and I have a callback function. So we have a simple function which has error and results, and here we have to iterate with error and result. So actually to do that, all that I'm doing is that I will basically create a variable. I'm naming this as message because I want to show data in our front end. So if there is any error, we will simply throw the error. I won't send the error in our front end, we will leave that right here. But if you go to results, basically let me first just print the results. Let's just see what we're getting. So if I say console.log results, you can see the results that we're getting. You will see that this is an array. So if we say something like the results dot length is equal to, basically double is equal to 0, which means if it's an empty array, so I'm saying message is equal to empty, which means there is no data. Else if this is not empty, I will simply set the message is equal to let's say data. Now here in this video, I'm assuming that only a single, just want to get the first result for every email. So I will say res dot render, because we can't redirect, we have to show the data, so we have to send the data. So we have to again render our search view. The message will be message, but here the data will be results. I just don't want to put the array, I'm simply sending a single value, so results.0. So if there is any result, just send the first row to our front end. Having done that, let's save this here. Since we are logging the result here, let's save this. Let's open our browser. So I think everything is pretty good. Let's enter an email. So this is a valid email which exists in the database. Let's click on search and let's hope there are no issues. Alright, so we just have something going round and round. Let's see what's the issue. Alright, this shouldn't be connection.query is equal to, this should be connection.query. Then we have to send this. I think this could be the error. Let's go back. Let's click on RS. Here in our search, let's enter an email that exists in our database. So we have prince@gmail.com. Let's click on search. Since I've added that, I remember it. So if I go back to my command prompt, you can see that now in our array we have a single row data packet with an ID, name, email, country, education. If I enter something that I haven't added to my database as at gmail.com, and let's click on search, here we get an empty array, right? And I have added something else, that's eva@gmail.com. So let's see that to eva@gmail.com. So let's click on search, and here you can get that particular data too, that's eva. Now if you want to show the data, the process is again pretty simple. All that we have to do is that since we are sending the data, remember we are sending the data and we are sending the message. So let's go to our search.js. Now here in this division, I will create a simple division. So this should be in the center and the text in this should be center. Now remember, we are rendering our search.js in certain conditions. So when you will be making a get request here, when you make a get request, and then when you are sending the search.js, that's when we are rendering the view, which is search. At this particular time, this data will be empty. Okay, so when this data is completely empty, you can't simply check for the message. So what we have to actually do here is that we have to make sure that our data is present. So if your data is not present, if your data has not been sent to the front end, and I'm not talking about sending null data or empty data, I'm saying that it's not being sent at all. So the type of that particular data will be undefined. So I'm saying if the type of message is not equal to undefined, I think the spelling is correct, then we have to check if message is double equal to empty. If the message is empty, indeed, this means there is no data, right? But if the message is not empty, then I can simply show the data. And since I'm rendering a single row, I don't have to iterate through that. I can simply show the data right here itself. Again, I have to convert them to templating tags. So I have these lines which are our templating tags. So add this thing right here. And then here we have to close the templating tag with a mod and a closing angle bracket, which is basically less than angle bracket, right? Sorry, greater than angle bracket. So if the message is empty, indeed, I think that's the thing that you're centering, right? EMPTY, empty, right? So if the message is empty, I'll simply create a division. I'll name this as alert, and this will be an alert danger. I want it to be a little bit of red. So in this alert danger in H3, I'll simply say no data found. Let's save this. So let's go back to our browser. Let's click on refresh. Okay, let's click on continue. I will just simply say a@gmail.com. Let's click on search and we will get this no data found, because obviously data doesn't exist. But what if data exists? In that case, we won't get anything because we have to still show the data. So in the else case, all that I'm doing is that I'm saying division dot nothing, just a simple division. In this division, I will simply put the class as bc.dark because I want it to look a bit different. And then here in the H3, I will simply set your data. Then in certain p tags, I will have all the data. So in the first p tag, I can show, let's say, name. So remember this template tag again, and then we have the data which is being sent as data, and then data name. We have email, we have education, we have country. Now let's click on refresh, and since we're submitting the same email, there is no data. I'm saying let's say again friends@gmail.com because we remember that data is present in our backend. So let's click on search and you get your data. So we have your data, we have friends @gmail.com, graduate in India. Let's say eva@gmail.com. We again have some data, that's this data. If we say e@gmail.com, which doesn't exist, we click on search, we say we get no data found. And you can always go back to home, you can enter some name, some email, and you can select a high school, you can select a country, click on register, and this will register yourself. So you can come back and you can search for the data. And here, as you can see, we have all the data present here which we have inserted using Node JS. So that's pretty much it from my side in this video, where we have talked about Node JS, MySQL. We have created this simple form which kind of, for beginners, I think this will give you an insight of how to use MySQL with Node JS. And if you want to create any hobby project and then host it for cheap prices at a shared hosting, you can obviously do that. By the way, just a quick reminder, not all hosting services support Node JS. So before you buy a hosting service, make sure that you ask them if they support Node JS or not. So that's it from my side in this video. Keep coding, keep loving, keep shading, and peace.